Oh, Paul Hunt is the New Zealand Human Rights Commissioner. He joins us now from Christchurch. Good to have you with us, sir. You've been quoted as saying we need to fight intolerance. What more needs to be done?
Well, first, just briefly, some context. We have to keep in mind that when you look across the world, New Zealand has one of the best human rights records in the world. But one has to say the competition isn't great, is it? New Zealand is a multicultural society. It's welcoming of all religions, all backgrounds, all ethnicities. But having said that, there's no doubt that in some quarters of society in New Zealand, there is a problem of Islamophobia and there is a problem of racism. And we have to be mature enough to recognize that and then try and take steps to deal with it.
Right. Now, since you mentioned globally, when you look at the pattern, for example, the 2018 Europol report shows that right-wing ethnic nationalist and separatist terrorism accounts, what they call terrorism, I should say, this is not our terminology, accounts for more attacks than any other category. You find similar claims from the Anti-Defamation League report in the US. I'm wondering whether you think enough focus has been given to the threat of white supremacist and nationalist, what is termed as terrorism and attacks and radicalization around the world.
Well, certainly in New Zealand, I think that we have to give closer attention to this ghastly, invidious problem. We have to give closer attention to it. I mean, for instance, we, the New Zealand Human Rights Commission, have been asking for better collection of hate-related crimes. We need to know the scale of the problem. And then once we have that information, we need to have a comprehensive survey, examination of this phenomenon in New Zealand. And then we need to devise, on top of that, an effective plan of action to deal with this sort of xenophobic extremism. And I think that it's beholden on us, in order to support the Islamic community in New Zealand, to take those steps and others. I have to say that I'm here in Christchurch and I'm attending a lot of meetings with the Muslim community here in Christchurch, and I'm really impressed by the unity they demonstrate and the dignity they exhibit. And it's those sorts of sentiments on which we have to build. But we must recognize that there is a problem and devise suitable policies to address it.
It's really interesting what you mentioned, that perhaps there should be more attention to actually collecting the data of these sorts of attacks and incidents. I'm wondering do you think that perhaps maybe too often in the past, the focus of radicalization has simply been on the Muslim aspect of it, as if it's, the only problem of radicalization is the Muslim community, if data is not even being collected appropriately on other forms of what you might want to call hate crimes or terrorism, or however you view it?
I think that in New Zealand there has not been sufficient attention to this problem. Speak to the Islamic community here, speak to the Muslim community here. There is an experience of Islamophobia in some quarters. They also are very careful to say that New Zealand is a wonderful country to raise children in. They say that too, but they also recognize that there is a problem of Islamophobia in some quarters and of racism in some quarters, and that has to be recognized by us here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, and we have to deal with it. We can't turn our eyes away from this.
While you're right, a lot of Muslim leaders have really praised the response of authorities as well as the outpouring of love from the public in New Zealand. I wonder how concerned you are about events happening somewhere far away in the world and the ability of that to impact New Zealand. Just to give an example, it's reported that the manifesto of this alleged gunman had words of praise for the US President Donald Trump. Does a rise in nationalist sentiment in one part of the world far away from New Zealand, present a challenge even to a largely peaceful and happy country like New Zealand?
On Friday, he tried to tear us in.
You're absolutely right. It does, and this country is geographically isolated, but that doesn't protect us from venomous, xenophobic extremism, and we have to look at the question of social media and the platforms, and whether or not how we can better regulate in an appropriate way these platforms so that they can't spread their bile as they do at the moment. And this venom does extend from other countries into New Zealand, and we have to take this difficult question of regulation of the social media and indeed other media, we have to take that seriously.
Paul Hunt, been wonderful talking to you. Thank you so much.